So the very first thing is just, creating a survey and, what are all the parts? So when you get in there, this is a whole gobbledygook of information on the screen. You've got a ton of different survey options. Um, and just kind of going through those just to kind of briefly explain. I've kind of put their equivalents, like if you're used to using other form builder, uh, for surveys like SurveyMonkey or um, what are some of the other ones? Rachel, help me out.
Google Forms, Qualtrics.
Qualtrics, that was one I was thinking of, yeah. And so just to kind of give you the equivalents, I wanted to put those on here. So the first thing is just to name your survey. Usually I like to put the semester that I'm actually sending this out so that when I clone it, maybe for the next semester, I could have like different um, versions of the survey. Maybe we added some questions, maybe we took a few away, because it evolves, over time. You might want to capture different information. So I'm gonna usually start off with just giving it a name to what it applies to and maybe the time period. The next thing is the display to user, which is kind of like the frequency. So we have only once reoccurring or a manual one-time kind of send to a certain group of students. So those are kind of your three options on how that goes out. And only once is what it sounds like. Reoccurring, you can change the frequency. So maybe you want it every other visit, maybe you want it every fifth visit, however frequently you want that. So that's what the display to user means is kind of like the frequency. And then next we have the survey event. So this is kind of like the trigger or the mechanism that causes our survey to go out to the users. And we have two different options here. They don't necessarily make sense at face value, but one is based on a sign-in event. So like in other words, they're coming into your center, and that could be virtually, it could be through the sign-in kiosk. However, they're going to be signing in and saying, hey, I'm here. The other trigger that could happen is if they log into your website. So whether you guys have single sign-on enabled or they're just logging in through using an Accudemia password, um, that could trigger a survey to go off as well. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's more of like, oh, how easy was it to set up an appointment today or something like that versus something related to actually visiting. So those are kind of your two options on what triggers or spikes the event to go off. Um, next is your sign-in basis. So we have basically different criteria. So if they're uh, now, one of the things I should note too is if you change one of these settings, different options are going to appear. So you may not get all of these. So in other words, like if I did the accesses through the internet, then I probably won't see any of these other options. But because like if I selected like a sign in based on a sign in, we're going to have some different reasons that they could, be signing in for. And the sign in base is basically the subject of the survey. So if you think about it like that, is it the center? Is it because of a service that they selected? Is it because they picked a particular course or met with a particular group of tutors? Um, so you get to choose which of those you want the survey to be based on. And it's a nice way to, like for instance, if I'm doing this only for my tutoring service, then I know that all my coaching and advising and all that that might be housed under my center are not going to get this survey. Now I could have a different survey that goes out for those different services. But for this one, I'm going to isolate it to one service, one course, maybe one center, and so on and so forth. So the next is the show at, and basically that's just when you want the user to see that. So it's typically something like sign in, sign out, which makes sense if you're at a traditional kiosk. But we also have an option that says access the internet or internet access. And again, that's just really talking about when they access the website from the backend. So if they're, logging in to Accudemia through SSO or, they have an Accudemia password that you gave them and let them know, how to log in. or you had them request a password through like the forgot your password link. Um, so however they're logging in, that would be that internet access. And then the sign in, sign out is only when they visit the center. Um, and the show two is just going to be the audience. So this is going to be all the different roles that we have in academia. So you could have a survey that either goes out to students. Most of them are going to go out to students, but you could have one that goes out to tutors. Maybe you want to get like a quick survey on, how the tutors are feeling about the semester, if there's any resources that might be helpful that they need in order to help, the students out. They also have ones that go out to instructors as well as system users. So you could have, depending on the type of survey, all those different groups or audience that you would send that out to. Um, now, like I said, not all of these things will appear depending on what you pick. So like the next section is the advanced settings, and I actually don't have it in the screenshot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait to go over some of those advanced settings. Once we're actually in that section, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But we have something like the frequency details, which is the number of times uh, that it's going to go off, how frequently. Um, if you want to force them to take the survey, pop-up that can come up to remind them they have a survey, the dates, like when it's going to occur, as well as email notifications and the current status of the survey, whether it's active or basically started or stopped. Started means that it's active, stopped means that it's inactive. And then, of course, we have the questionnaire tab where you're going to fill out the survey, like create all the questions for it. And then the basis is usually going to be a grouping of tabs depending on what you selected. For instance, if I pick tutors, I might actually have a centers tab and a tutors tab so that only, um, you know, uh, possibly ask the survey for a particular center in case like tutors, they might work at multiple centers or something like that. So I might have two tabs depending on what I selected. All right, cool. And we'll see that in a second. I'm going to go in the system. Okay, and now we're talking about cloning and not that type of cloning. So let's keep going. So the cloning here is basically when I have a survey that I really like or I want to use every semester, and maybe we change things to it. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's just because it's the next semester and we want to re-trigger that survey to go out. We really liked it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the survey, just check the box next to it. And then once I've checked it, there's a clone button up here. So we clone it, and then it's going to show that we have a cloned version of it. So at this point, I could actually make any changes. So maybe originally it was based on service, but I want to change it to, base it on the center instead. So maybe it's something that goes out to the center now instead of just a few services that I tested it with. So at that point, when you clone it, before you make the first save, you can actually make a lot of those adjustments and changes to the way it goes out. Um, and then the questionnaire, of course, if you want to add or remove questions, you can do that. Um, but yeah, so it's a really convenient feature so that every semester I can make whatever adjustments I want to and have a new, fresh version of it to go out to my students. And of course, I would update the dates and everything that it goes out to. And while you're either creating or editing the survey, you can actually preview it. So there's a few different options. So if we go back to this screen, it's kind of like to the right of that clone button, we have a preview right there. So if it's already been saved while it was on that screen, but we also have a preview button while you're editing it. So you'll see like right next to the save and discard button, there's a preview. Um, Once you do, it kind of has a pop-up like this, and you'll be able to kind of fill it out as if you were the student. So uh, now it will let you just exit out, like if you have forced on and all this other stuff. Maybe you have required questions, so it won't act exactly necessarily like how it's supposed to. But it should indicate like required fields with the little red, excuse me, red asterisks. And then you can check like if the checkbox are working how you intended, or maybe you wanted radio buttons or a drop down or something like that. So anyway, but that's kind of like a good way just to kind of get an initial feel for how it works, without actually, running it and actually testing it with a real student.
I have a question about that, Nick.
Sure.
So one thing I've heard from clients who use single sign-on is that it's not really a simple matter to create a test student the way it is with a traditional sign-in
Mhm.
options. And although we do recommend incorporating single sign-on when you can, so how would a school using single sign-on be able to test this?
It's a good question. I think it depends on when they're taking it because, if you think about it, like in the traditional sense, like if they're gonna go into a sign-in station anyway, um, let's say it's displaying at sign in or sign out, that you can test easily through a sign-in kiosk. And even if you're not offering like face-to-face, you could actually still, um, trigger it through a regular traditional sign-in kiosk, so you can still kind of test it that way. Now, if you're doing it when they're, accessing through the internet, um, there is a way, kind of like a backdoor. And if you're curious about that, to log in as that user, and kind of bypass single sign-on. We actually made it in case like your single sign-on failed for some reason and you had to like emergency get in there and fix it. Like maybe the certificate needs to be updated. Maybe they changed something, with the SAML connection. So, you could use that technically to get in and try it out and test it. But I think in most cases, you're going to be able to test it through a sign-in station. I don't see a lot of people, having them fill it out like through the interface or get triggered that way. Um, so, I mean, you can, um, do it that way though if we need to. And like I said, I could provide more details later, if anybody has questions.
Okay, great.
Okay, so next is, starting, stopping, and deleting, and we're pretty much kind of just going down the line of what you can do here. The start and stop button actually is the same button. So if I have one that's active and I have it, selected, I'm going to have the stop button, right here as well as the delete. If I select one that's inactive, then it will have a start button here instead. So that's pretty easy. And, the thing is, you do have dates associated with each, survey. So even if something is like, still active, but it might be past the dates, it really doesn't affect anything too much. The only thing is like the student might still have like in their pending surveys an old survey, that they haven't, completed because it will only go out through those dates that you have set. So, you don't have to worry too much that if you didn't go in there and stop it right away, that, new students are going to take that same survey. Okay. And so now we're going to go ahead and test that with a fake student, maybe even, a tutor that is a student, so we can see how that looks as well. Um, and let me go ahead. And, we just have to remember, what was the trigger, what was causing, that survey to go off. And when, this kind of speaks to what Rachel was asking and everything, when did we want them to see it, you know, um, so that we know exactly how to test it and what is the best way to go about that. So I'm just going to click this link. Hopefully that opens up for me. There we go. Okay, so here's a sign-in station. And before I do this, I don't think I even have a survey enabled, so I'm going to go ahead and log in and use my admin credentials. There we go. All right, so I'm logged in as an admin, so I'm going to go to Administration, Surveys, in case you weren't sure where to get to it. That's right there. And we have this fall 2021, but it looks like I never set up anything for the spring yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop this one. That way it's not going to show up for the students any longer. Now, what I probably want to do is just just reissue this to our students. So I'm going to go ahead and start and clone that by selecting it. And while it's cloned, I'm going to go ahead and update the semester that it's going to apply to. I actually like the reoccurring feature because I get a lot of advanced options and things like that, and I can get more than just one survey from each student. Now you can choose how often you want to bug them and stuff like that, so you don't have to do it every time. But it's nice to kind of get more data in there to see, but at the same time not bug too much. And I'm basing mine on the sign-in, and it's based on services. So if we go back to the top, you can see that services are selected. So this one's mainly like a writing assistance, tutoring, and skills session one. So all my other services, I don't have this set up for. Remember I said at this point I could change it though. So if I were to click on any of these, I could have new tabs that I could select from. The show at. So we're gonna, now this one was set up originally so that they would get this in their email. Because what I was going to do is I have it show at the internet access, and what that does is they don't actually see it during the sign in or sign out process. But for our testing today, I want to go ahead and do this at sign in so that we can see it right away. Um, and like I said, if you wanted to test it just to see how it worked, you could set it to this mode, save it, and then clone it again so that you can update it and change the way you want it to go out maybe. Um, if that makes sense. But and then here's in the advanced options. I'm gonna leave it set to every visit, but you could, definitely change this to like every third visit, every other visit would be two, however frequently you want. And I'm not gonna use the force option, but you can, like if you want them to complete it every time that it is given, you could put the number 0 here so that they have to complete it right then and there, like while they're doing the sign in or whenever it's actually shown to them. So that's kind of cool. And basically what that does, it gets rid of the cancel button after however many days is set here. Okay, and we're gonna just change the dates real quick. And I'm just gonna set this for the full term. And okay, and this send email notifications, this is really cool. Now, because I'm forcing it, I'm not going to actually send out an email notification, but you could have an up to 3 emails that go out about this survey. So the initial one, once they trigger it, as well as 2 reminders. And you can choose like the frequency, like maybe the first reminder is like 2 days away, and then the next one is like 5 days away or something like that. Um, and you don't want to extend that too far because then they might forget the details about what you're asking about. So but those are some options. I'm going to actually just remove all those from this one. You can customize each of those templates too. I don't know if I had mentioned that, but that's actually kind of a new thing where you can customize those. And I never went into the questionnaire, but I have some general info that I want to know, like what their major is, and this is an assessment that I want them to kind of how would you rate the services? What services would you like to see? Where it's kind of multiple choice, and then giving them an other option, and then like an opportunity to fill that out. So you can kind of see like, and then any additional comments. You make a question required, optional. Um, open text means that they can just put whatever they want in a text box. Multiple choice. This gets a little different. So like when I do multiple choice, I can either allow multiple responses where they get a checkbox, or if I uncheck that, it's going to be drop down or radio buttons where they can only choose one option. And then I can define what those options are and even give them weights. So you can see like up, if I go up here, um, like this one, I give them a few options. Now these don't have weights to them, but maybe on the scale where I have like excellent to bad, I have different weights so that it, holds more weight if it's a higher rating. And that's good for like graphing things out later on. So, okay. So that's pretty good. I think I'm going to save the changes and, okay, that was the Skills and Tutoring Center. I just want to make sure. And it says, do you want to activate the survey when you go to save it? If I were to say no, it would just be stopped like all these others. But if I say yes, you'll see like a little play icon, and I can stop it. Or like on these other ones that are stopped already, I could always start it. So let's go ahead and test that out. I'm going to just use the admin's little quick sign-in station option. And I'm going to use a test student that I have here, 555. Okay, so this is actually a student who's also a tutor. So they're given the option to sign in as a student today or sign in as a tutor. And I'm going to go ahead and do walk in as a student. We're going to pick one of those services that that was triggered for. Okay, and we'll pick a tutor. Okay, and they just want your number and any kind of notes that you want to add. And I have way too many things enabled. Do I want to report the visit to my instructor? These are all options that you don't have to have enabled. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, I want to sign in now. Okay, and I did this at sign in, so that's why it's coming up right now. So let's say, okay, and say good. Now this doesn't make sense necessarily at sign in. That's why it is being sent out afterward. But I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how that looks. And let's see, physics lab. Sure, that sounds like a good idea. And maybe um, okay, cool. Maybe I should make that add a for use while on campus. Why not? Okay, we'll make it a complete sentence. There we go. Save that. And there we go. So that's pretty much it as far as the testing I would go through. You could go and like I said, if let's say you didn't really want this set up the way we just set it up, like I said, you could always go ahead and clone it. And then when you go to clone it, um, for right now, I just leave it name clone, but we're gonna go ahead and change the method. So like for instance, if I wanted it to really be accessed later on, like after the visit, um, then I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then maybe I'll just send an email notification about it, kind of like what we were doing before, and I can remove some of these other options here. And then I would just save that. And then I could go back and delete this one because we know it worked. We tried it out. It worked really well. And then I could actually use this one. So I could stop this and go ahead and delete that. And once it's deleted, I've got my clone one that I can just simply rename. So I'll just get rid of the clone part, save that. And then I know exactly the name that I'm looking for when I go to pull a report. And I didn't include this in the slide, so I just want to show you this. But if I go to reports, um, and sorry, look up survey, there's a bunch of different kinds of surveys. So if you want to explore those, you can. I think I'm about out of time though, so let me